I'm Gregor Thompson, I'm a philosopher and a writer, and I know what the meaning of life is. Welcome to The Struggle. This episode is brought to you by the Struggle for Meaning newsletter. This is a weekly email newsletter that I send out for free every Sunday, a short article concerning the art of embracing struggle. I also send out tips, strategies, recommendations such as movies, music, podcasts and recipes to help along the way. To sign up completely for free, go to gregorthompson.com, the link will be in the show notes, confirm your subscription and make sure you check your spam folder for your welcome newsletter and add me to your contacts to continue to receive it in your inbox for free. And that's it. You're on your way to struggling more and being more productive, healthy and motivated. Now, let's get on with the struggle. This is episode 11 of The Struggle with me, Gregor Thompson. And at the time of this recording, it's 2024. It's 3 years on from a global event that affected everyone on the planet. The COVID-19 pandemic caused massive lockdowns, mask wearing, mass vaccine rollouts, questions regarding vaccine efficiency and safety, and questions regarding the origins of the disease. The majority of humans globally stayed inside their homes if they were lucky enough to have one, without any outside human contact other than themselves, or again, if they were lucky, their loved ones. Some of us were lucky enough to still be receiving salaries, and some weren't so lucky. Some still had to go to work in order to keep the world turning, and some had the luxury of having the option to sit on the couch all day binge-watching Netflix and eating the very foods that would make them more susceptible to illness from COVID-19. I was in the latter camp, but I did not sit on the couch binge-watching Netflix and eating rubbish. For the most part. Like some in a similar position to me, I took this time and made the most of it. I started working on projects I had been putting off due to time constraints. I started the In Context podcast. I'd wanted to begin a podcast for a while, and having all of this extra time made that more possible. I sat in my room, recorded 3 conversations with my generous friends, one an A&E nurse in London, another a mental health social worker in Edinburgh, and another a retail worker in Fife, all of whom were doing vital work during a global pandemic to ensure that we didn't fall too far into chaos. The podcast lasted 28 episodes, and I was lucky enough to speak to some of the most interesting people on the planet. You can still watch or listen to the In Context podcast on YouTube, Spotify, or Apple Podcasts. Of course, I pivoted my aims this year by starting the Struggle podcast, as I believe it hones in more effectively on the problems we all face in 2024 and the problems we will likely face in the future. I also started writing more for pleasure during the pandemic. I prepared for my second master's degree in philosophy. I exercised more and in new ways like cycling and running so that I could still be outside in nature during lockdown. And I started cooking for my parents, spending more time with my parents, something I'd rarely if ever done before. Others used this time as a much needed break, which is understandable given the culture of work we employ in the Western world. Working 9 till 5, 5 days a week is a tiring existence, especially given that many 9 till 5 jobs do not require 8 hours a day to produce the most output. So of course, many people needed a break. But let's talk about these 2 groups of people who were lucky enough to be paid without working during the pandemic. But we're going to talk about them in the broader context of life after the pandemic. Both groups, let's say, had been working a job they weren't passionate about. Both groups had a dream they wanted to pursue but hadn't yet. One group saw the potential in the horror of the pandemic and began an ambitious journey. They finally started that creative endeavour they'd been putting off for years. They started a business or learned a new skill. But the other group realised that they hadn't taken a break from their tiring life and rested with the intention of returning to the job they feel little to no passion for. Both decisions are productive. We do need to aim upwards as well as rest, but their former group is the one we should strive to be like, at least some of the time. The latter are working hard, not smart. They're tired like so many of us, but they aren't thinking far enough into the future. They haven't acknowledged that if they're tired now doing a job they feel little passion for, how tired will they be after 10 years of that? The former group have acknowledged that they're tired, they've acknowledged they feel no passion for their job, and they've acknowledged that in order to pursue a dream, it's going to be even more tiring. But they see the future potential, the possibility of eventually never having to work a job they feel no passion for, if only they put in the extra work now. Unfortunately, the majority of the population have never aimed as high as their potential would allow. We all have ambition when we're young, we dream, but this ambition dissolves pretty quickly when others' ambition dissolves. They impart their mediocrity on you. People lower their expectations and in turn yours as well. Then you settle within the confines of just fine, which is worse than hating life, because at least when you hate life, when you hit rock bottom, all you can do is aim up. But if you're stuck in the middle, you become complacent, and sooner or later you're stuck in a job you feel nothing for and never wanted to do, to pay off purchases in debt from buying things you thought would make you happy or you thought others would respect you for. But the truth is, you're bored with those purchases now. Inevitably, the house is boring now. The car isn't as fast as the new one, and the new clothes have been worn once and will never be worn again. The majority go to a job they feel indifferent about for 8 hours a day, come home, eat rubbish for dinner to make up for the hard day they've just had, and distract themselves with TV, social media, or whatever other distraction helps them not think about the next morning. This is a life filled with unreliable and unproductive pleasure, as well as needless, unnecessary, and unproductive struggle. The struggle of dread, of indifference, and of regret. If this is you, ask yourself if that's what you want your life to be like. If it is, fair enough, more power to you. But if it's not, let this be the catalyst that sparks change for the better. Going to a job you hate or feel nothing for is a struggle, but it's not productive struggle unless it's funding something productive, like a side hustle, education, creative endeavours, or your family. If you're lucky enough to be financially stable, a side hustle or a creative endeavour shouldn't be impossible. People have achieved a hell of a lot more with a hell of a lot less. So what's your excuse? Excuses are unreasonable if you have the means to better yourself. Binge watching television produces pleasure, but the only result from doing that is a slightly increased knowledge of baking. This is unproductive unless you're taking a break, but if you're constantly taking a break, it's not a break anymore, it's an unproductive habit. I'm not suggesting you never take a break or you never binge watch TV, just that you don't prioritize that over more important goals and ambitions. Also, to be clear, I'm not blaming anyone for the lives they live. There are a multitude of factors that lead someone towards unfulfilled potential, an unfulfilling job, and an unfulfilling life. We do not give enough credit to the impact of these factors in our lives. Genetics, culture, society, friends, parents, upbringing, illness, grief, class, race, gender, sexuality, height, weight, big nose, small nose. You get the idea. All of these things we have limited or no control over. However, what we may have some degree of control over is changing our lives for the better now and in turn improving our futures. We are not locked into the lives we live now forever. We have power. We can find meaning and purpose in this meaningless and purposeless world. The world has no meaning. The world doesn't care what happens to you. And we're all going to die. So we shouldn't despair if we fall into the camp of people that do not have any meaning in our lives and are unfulfilled or trapped on the hamster wheel of society. The societies humans have built do not care whether or not you have meaning and purpose. TikTok or Instagram doesn't care about whether or not you have meaning in your life. It just wants you to keep scrolling. Netflix doesn't care about your fulfillment. It just wants you to watch another episode. And governments, as much as they might say they do not care about whether or not your job brings you purpose. All they care about is the next election. So how do we fight back? The answer is clear. Embrace productive struggle, aim upwards, struggle your way through the judgment of others, struggle your way through the work and graft it will take to improve yourself and the lives of others. Wake up and ask yourself if you could be better, if you could be contributing more to the lives of others by contributing more to your own life. So, as I have said before, find something that is a struggle, is productive, brings some form of pleasure at some point in the process, and brings meaning and fulfillment to your life. Do not rely on fleeting escapism, distractions, material possessions, the approval of others, comfort, or virtual likes for your fulfillment or happiness. Work on yourself, believe in your unfulfilled potential, and fill it up. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it sure as hell beats a life of slow depredation, spending the majority of your time either working for something you don't care about or sitting watching mindless TV for hours on end to distract yourself from working for something you don't care about. We should all want to look back on our lives and say that we struggled, we accomplished, we achieved, we contributed, we loved, we found meaning, and we worked our arses off, but it was worth it. The answer lies in the struggle, so keep on struggling. Just a few more things before you take off. First, thank you for watching. It genuinely means a lot to see people viewing the content. And second, if you are enjoying the content, please subscribe. That's the best way you can support the podcast. Now, I'll see you next week.